Cool. So I'm Matt Williams, and I've hacked on ETH Gateway, and I've written some very high-tech slides. Yeah, so what I was looking at was, it's actually quite similar to what Emmanuel was looking at. So there's this idea of having a bridge between Riot, which is one instant messaging platform, and Status, which is a different instant messaging platform based on Ethereum. Emmanuel was looking at the problem of actually how do you get the two talking to each other in terms of the actual code that you write. What I wanted to look at was actually, well, where do you run this code? So you can obviously run it on a kind of a centralized server that acts as a gateway, but the challenge with that is that both of these systems are decentralized, and it's kind of a shame if you have to have a centralized point of communication to join these two decentralized networks up. So I wanted to try and investigate that. And so what I built was ETHGW, which is this box in the middle, or cloud in the middle, and it basically acts as an HTTP gateway for Riot. On actually a domain. It goes and queries that domain via Ethereum name service, which is built into, at least as part of the standard set of services that comes with Embark, which is with Status. And once it's got the once it looks up the domain name, it then gets as part of that the identity of a file in IPFS. It pulls that down. That file is actually a WebAssembly, and that WebAssembly binary basically responds to the HTTP request. And ideally, it would then go and talk into Status and do stuff. I didn't quite get that far, but I do have a web server which pulls things from IPFS. So here is my web server. You can actually go to this on the public internet. It is demo1.ethgw.uk.to:8888, and this is real. This is working. And if I look at the code, this is some source code. This is actually Rust. This is all written in Rust because I wanted to play around with some Rust code. And what this code is doing is this is that kind of main function. It's tracing out, it's handling a request and tracing out the method and the URL. It's then setting a response to be 200, setting a custom header, and setting a response body that says hi, you requested, and then the URL, which is what we just saw. And if I refresh that page, this is my server, and if I refresh that page again, then we get another log there. And if I type something on the URL, then that updates and updates as well. So all that's showing you really is I can build a web server. The interesting bit is that this is all compiled into WebAssembly and then pushed up to IPFS and updated, and we update the name service as well. So does anyone want to give me a new message to type in? Sorry? Hi, Tadhack, cool. And new URL, new domain to host that on. It's got to end in .gw.uk.to.
Tadhack 18.
Tadhack 18. Cool. And so now if I go to Tadhack 18.ethgw.uk.to. Oops. So that has that's running. Yeah, that was basically what I had to show. And this is all open source. So I've stuck it on my GitHub, which is Matt Williams ETHGW. And as part of this, there was an open source Rust crate for Ethereum name service, but it wasn't very complete. So I forked it and made quite a few enhancements to it. I'm hoping to push those back upstream. That was my hack.
Brilliant. Thanks, Matt. Any questions for Matt about how we put the hack together?
So the way I understand it, you've got essentially the gateway, so it performs a fetch.
Yeah. So this is the server. And whenever it receives a request, so I've got a domain where every subdomain is redirected back to this IP address. And although it's only a single server at the moment, I mean, this is actually completely, there's nothing special about this server. It could absolutely be a distributed cluster.
So if you were to, if you wanted to say forward a communication from Riot to Status, how would you kind of undergo about it?
Right. So I believe that Riot has a notification mechanism. So you can basically get an HTTP request, or Riot will make an HTTP request to a URL that you specify whenever a message comes in. So I would point that at my cluster of servers, and then that would then go and hit this. This would then pull the code from IPFS. And I don't currently have the ability to then make onward requests into Ethereum, but that's just because I ran out of time.
Okay.
But the code that I've written in WebAssembly can basically do anything, or can theoretically do anything. Obviously, it's sandboxed, so you can do nasty things. I mean, let's say at the beginning, the reason I was going for this was because the idea of having a centralized server felt kind of unfortunate. I haven't completely solved the problem because although this can now be completely decentralized, one of the challenges is how do you ensure that your messages are being treated appropriately, and that's a more difficult problem. I think you could potentially do things where you could check. You could if you suspected that a particular host was doing the wrong thing, you could potentially kind of send it probe messages and see what it did with them. But yeah, that's definitely further investigation.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.